The rain had begun long before dawn, a slow, steady tapping against the tinted windows of Adrian Hale's black SUV. He barely noticed. His mind was on the quarterly meeting, on numbers and deadlines, on the thousands of employees who waited for him to speak like he was some kind of machine that never felt, never hesitated, never broke. The city blurred past, cold lights, wet roads, people with umbrellas, each one living a life he would never understand. Adrian lived in the world of polished marble offices and sealed boardrooms, where human problems were always written on paper, never spoken with trembling lips. At least that's what he believed. Until the moment he stepped out of his car and heard a voice so small, so fragile, it pierced through the noise of the entire world. "Sir." He turned. She couldn't have been older than 8. A tiny girl, soaked to the bone, her hair clinging to her cheeks, her backpack sagging with rainwater. Her lower lip trembled as she looked up at him, eyes desperate, scared, and shining with tears she was trying her hardest not to shed. "Sir," she whispered again, clutching the strap of her bag with white knuckles. My mom isn't waking up." The umbrella in his hand slipped a little. His breath caught. Something cracked deep inside his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. She swallowed hard. "Please, can you help me?" He had heard employees beg for promotions, business partners beg for investments, lawyers beg for leniency. But he had never heard a child beg for her mother's life. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice softer than he knew it could be. "Lena," she whispered. "And your mom, what happened?" She shook her head violently. She didn't open her eyes since morning. "I called an ambulance, but they said they can't come fast. There's too many calls, and I don't know what to do. I'm scared." Her words broke completely, dissolving into sobs she tried to hide behind her small hands. Adrian felt something he had forgotten existed, a fierce, protective instinct he didn't know he still had. "Where are the guards?" His mind snapped. How did they let an 8-year-old walk into a corporate plaza like this? Why is she alone? But the more important question, what if he did nothing? "Take me to her," he said at once. Lena looked up, eyes widening like she wasn't sure she heard him right. Really?" "Yes, right now." She grabbed his hand with both of hers and pulled as though afraid he'd disappear if she let go. Her fingers were freezing, so small, so fragile. He didn't hesitate. "Lucas," he called to his driver, "cancel everything. Tell the board I won't be in today." The driver stared, speechless. He had seen Adrian cancel million-dollar deals, but never a board meeting. Adrian didn't care. All he saw was the girl. "Come," he said gently, guiding her into the backseat of the car, turning up the heat for her. She sat there shaking, her wet clothes dripping onto the leather seats. He should have cared about any of that. He didn't. "Where do you live?" he asked. She rattled off an address, one he recognized immediately. A bad neighborhood, too many people, not enough help, ambulances always late, houses that broke before the people inside did. "We'll be there in 10 minutes, he promised. Her voice cracked. "Thank you, sir." The car sped through traffic, wipers struggling against the heavy rain. Lena kept glancing out the window, her knees bouncing with panic. "Is your mom sick?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "She was fine last night. She read to me. She tucked me in. She kissed my forehead like always, but this morning," her voice broke. "She was cold and breathing weird and she wouldn't wake up." Her tears spilled again, silent and constant. Adrian swallowed, his jaw tightening. He remembered another small hand, another desperate voice, another time he arrived too late. "Not again. Not this time." "We're close," Lucas said. The neighborhood came into view, dilapidated buildings, cracked sidewalks, windows patched with tape. Rainwater pooled like dark mirrors holding secrets no one cared to look into. The car stopped in front of a narrow apartment building with peeling yellow paint. Here, Lena cried, already scrambling toward the door. Adrian grabbed an umbrella, ran around the car, and shielded her as they sprinted through the rain. She led him up narrow, dim stairs that smelled of mold and metal. Her small feet slapped against the concrete, too fast, too scared. She stopped at a door. "She's inside," she whispered. Her tiny hand trembled as she unlocked it. The apartment was small, one room doubling as a kitchen and living space, a thin curtain separating the only bedroom. The air was cold, too cold. "Mom," Lena called shakily, rushing to the bedroom. Adrian followed. He saw her at once. A woman in her mid-30s, lying on a thin mattress, her breathing shallow, her lips pale, her hair spread across the pillow like someone who had collapsed rather than slept. Her skin had a faint bluish tint. No movement. No response. Adrian stepped closer, kneeling beside the bed. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" "Nothing." He touched her wrist, searching for a pulse. It was there, weak, faint, but there. He exhaled, relief and fear mixing into something urgent. "She's alive," he said softly. Lena gasped with a sob of relief. "But she needs help immediately." He pulled out his phone. "I need an ambulance at 14th and Willow, apartment 3B, woman unconscious, shallow breathing, possible respiratory failure." "Sir, there's a long wait time," the operator began. "Put me on priority response. This is Adrian Hale." There was a sharp silence. "Yes, sir, dispatching immediately." He hung up and looked at Lena, who stood frozen, hands clasped together so tightly her knuckles had turned white. "Is she going to die?" she whispered. "No," he said firmly, placing his hand on her shoulder. "Not today." But inside he didn't know. He lifted the woman carefully, adjusting her so she could breathe better, propping her head up. He removed the damp blanket and replaced it with a dry one from a chair. Her skin was icy. "She needs warmth," he murmured. Lena rushed to him with another blanket, tears still dripping. He wrapped it around her mother gently. Minutes passed like hours. The rain outside grew louder, a steady roar against the windows. Then sirens. "They're here," Adrian said. Lena ran to the door. Paramedics entered the room quickly, checking vitals, placing her mother on a stretcher. "We need to get her to the hospital," one of them said immediately. "She's in severe distress." Lena's legs wobbled. "I am coming too." Adrian stepped beside her. "I'll take you." The paramedic nodded gratefully. As they moved down the stairs, Lena held Adrian's sleeve tightly, like letting go would mean losing everything. The ambulance doors closed with a loud click. Adrian looked at her trembling figure. "Don't worry," he whispered. But his voice cracked. Because for the first time in years, he was afraid too. Afraid of being too late. Afraid of failing a child who trusted him completely. Afraid of watching another life slip through his fingers. He climbed into the ambulance. And the moment the engine roared to life, he made a silent promise. He would not leave this child alone. He would not let her lose the most important person in her world. Not again. Not ever. The ambulance raced through the rain-soaked streets, its siren cutting through the storm-filled air. Adrian sat on the narrow side bench, gripping the edge so tightly his knuckles turned white. Across from him lay Lena's mother, oxygen mask secured, wires attached to her frail body, monitors blinking with urgent warnings. Lena sat beside her, clutching her mother's hand with both of hers, her little body shaking. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just stared at her mother like starring hard enough might keep her alive. Adrian felt every second stretch into something unbearable. He kept glancing at the medic, her oxygen levels. "Dropping," the medic muttered, adjusting the mask. "We're doing what we can." A cold fear twisted inside Adrian. He had seen numbers fall like this on screens before, but never attached to a human being in front of him, never with a child's trembling breaths filling the silence. The ambulance jolted to a stop in front of St. Mercy Hospital. The back doors flew open. Doctors were already waiting. Unconscious female, shallow breathing, suspected respiratory failure, possible pneumonia or drug reaction, the paramedics shouted as they rolled her out. "Prepare ICU," a doctor ordered. Lena tried to follow, but a nurse gently stopped her. "Sweetie, wait here for a minute." "No," she cried, panicked. "I'm not leaving her." Adrian immediately stepped in, placing his hand on her back. "I'm right here. We'll follow together. They need space for a moment." She looked up at him with tear-swollen eyes, trusting him in a way that felt like a weight in his chest. He didn't deserve that trust, but he would earn it. After what felt like an agonizing eternity, a nurse guided them toward the ICU waiting area. The walls were too white, too bright, too clean, a cruel contrast to the world Lena had come from. She sat on a chair far too big for her, legs dangling, shoes soaked and dripping on the floor. Her hands were clasped so tightly that her fingers shook from pressure. Adrian sat beside her, but even sitting felt wrong. Like the moment he relaxed, everything would fall apart. "Sir," Lena whispered after several long minutes, "is it my fault?" He jerked slightly. "What?" She stared at her small hands. "I told Mom last night that I didn't want her to work late. I told her I wish she didn't have to work at all. I got mad and I said I hate her job. She hugged me and said it's okay. But what if she got sick because of me?" She finally broke. Tears spilled fast, heavy, unstoppable. Adrian felt his chest ache. Gently, he reached for her hand. "Lena, listen to me." His voice was firm but soft, like he was speaking to something fragile and precious. "Nothing, absolutely nothing, is your fault. Your mom loves you more than you can imagine. She works hard because she loves you, not because of anything you said." "But she didn't wake up," she sobbed. "What if she never?" "She will," he said immediately, even though fear gnawed at him too. "She will, Lena. She just needs help and she's getting it now." She leaned against him suddenly, like her small body couldn't hold her emotions anymore. He froze for a second. He wasn't used to being touched. He wasn't used to comforting anyone. But slowly, almost unsure, he wrapped an arm around her. She felt weightless, a child carrying far too much. They stayed like that until a doctor in a green coat approached them. "Family of Ms. Marin?" he asked. Adrian looked at Lena, then rose to his feet. "We're here." The doctor studied him briefly, clearly unsure of their relationship, but Adrian's expression held no doubt. "What happened to her mom?" Lena whispered, stepping closer. The doctor knelt to her eye level. "Your mother is alive," he began gently. "She's stable for now, but she's very sick." Lena's breath hitched. "Is she going to die?" The doctor hesitated, but only for half a second. It was enough for Adrian to feel Lena's tiny hand squeeze his. "We're doing everything we can," the doctor continued. "She may have severe pneumonia brought on by exhaustion and malnutrition. We're running tests to confirm." Adrian stiffened. "Malnutrition." The doctor went on. "Her blood pressure is dangerously low. She hasn't been receiving proper rest or nutrition for a long time. Do you know if she works multiple jobs?" Lena nodded quietly. "She works in a bakery and at a cleaning place, and she makes food sometimes for neighbors. She works every day." Adrian felt something hot rise in his chest. Anger, guilt, something sharper. She worked multiple jobs. Barely slept. Barely ate. All while raising a child alone. And no one helped her. Not the system. Not the city. Not anyone with resources like him. The doctor sighed. She collapsed from a combination of severe infection and exhaustion. If she had been brought in any later, things could have been much worse. Lena's knees wobbled. Adrian steadied her instinctively. "Can we see her?" he asked. "Only one person for now," the doctor said. "She's sedated." Lena didn't hesitate. "I'll go." Adrian's heart twisted at her brave, trembling voice. "Of course," the doctor said softly and guided her inside. Adrian watched her disappear behind the ICU doors. He suddenly felt the crushing silence of the waiting room. A silence filled with too many memories. He sat slowly, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. He knew exhaustion. He knew overwork. He knew collapsing, just not physically. His own mother had worked herself into the grave for him when he was young. 3 jobs, no sleep, no help, no rest. He had sworn he'd never let another child live what he lived. Yet here he was, a billionaire, with everything. And somehow he had still failed to see the children who lived in the shadows of his city. He scrubbed a hand over his face, hiding the man he had become, one who only reached out when the damage was already done. A soft voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Excuse me, sir." He looked up. A nurse, middle-aged, kind eyes, clipboard in hand. "Are you family?" His voice came out steadier than he felt. "No, but I'm here for the little girl." She nodded. "She's sitting beside her mother. She's being very brave." Then she hesitated. "We just were concerned about their situation. The mother is extremely undernourished. Their medical records show no insurance, no emergency contacts if she survives. The recovery will be long and expensive." Adrian straightened. "I'll cover everything." The nurse blinked. "Sir, the costs may be substantial." "I said everything," he repeated firmly. "Whatever she needs, ICU specialists, aftercare, food, lodging, everything." The nurse's eyes softened with surprise. "I'll note that." He nodded, but inside, guilt cut deeper. Money. He could pay money easily. But where was he when this woman was drowning? Where was he when this child cried at night? What good was wealth if he only used it when it was too late? An hour later, Lena stepped out of the ICU room, head bowed. "Lena." She lifted her face, tears still drying on her cheeks. "She looks so tired. I told her to wake up. I told her I'm here, but she didn't move." She suddenly walked to him and rested her head on his arm. "Please don't leave us. I don't know what to do." Adrian felt something inside him break and rebuild in a new shape entirely. He crouched so he was level with her. "I'm not leaving," he said, the words carrying the weight of a promise he hadn't made in decades. "Not now, not ever. I'll help you and your mom through everything." Lena threw her arms around his neck, hugging him fiercely. He hugged her back without hesitation. The storm outside raged on, but inside that sterile hospital hallway, something shifted, something profound, something irreversible. Adrian Hale, CEO, billionaire, untouchable, made a silent vow. He would not let this little girl cry alone again. He would not let her mother fight this battle without every resource he had. And as he held Lena, he knew. This wasn't charity. This wasn't obligation. This was something deeper. Something he hadn't felt since he was a boy. Family. Even if none of them had said it yet, days passed, though to Lena they felt like years. The ICU humming, the smell of disinfectant, the cold metal chairs, everything etched itself into her little heart like a scar she would never forget. But she wasn't alone. Not once. Every morning, Adrian arrived before the nurses changed shifts. He brought warm breakfast for her, a clean sweater, sometimes a silly little toy to distract her, even though Lena rarely touched them. She preferred to sit beside her mother, holding her limp hand, whispering stories of school and made-up adventures she hoped her mother could hear. Adrian watched her with a heaviness he couldn't shake. For all his wealth, for all his power, he couldn't control life. He couldn't force someone to wake up. He couldn't wipe away a child's fear, not completely. But he stayed. He stayed because he didn't know how to walk away anymore. On the fourth night, when Lena finally fell asleep on the hospital couch, curled into a tight ball like she was trying to make herself smaller than her pain, Adrian draped his coat over her and stood watching her chest rise and fall. The nurse beside him whispered, "She trusts you a lot." He inhaled slowly. "I know." "Not many would do what you're doing," the nurse added gently. He didn't respond. He didn't want praise. He wanted Lena's mother, Maren, to wake up. But she didn't. Not the next day. Not the next night. Her vitals were stable but unmoving, like she was suspended between life and death. On the sixth morning, something changed. A nurse rushed into the waiting area where Adrian and Lena were eating quietly. She moved. Lena dropped her spoon. "Mom." "She squeezed my hand," the nurse said, breathless. "She's responding to external touch." Lena ran and Adrian followed. They entered the ICU room just as Maren's eyelashes fluttered. A weak sound escaped her lips, more like a whisper than a word, but it was enough. "Mom," Lena cried, gripping her hand. Maren's eyes slowly opened, clouded with confusion at first, then softening when she recognized the small face in front of her. "Lena," she breathed. It was barely audible, but it hit the room like a lightning strike. Lena burst into sobs, laughing and crying all at once. She pressed her forehead against her mother's hand. "I was so scared. I thought you were going to leave me." Adrian stepped back, swallowing hard. Relief washed over him like a wave so strong that his legs almost gave in. He stayed still only because Lena needed him to look strong. But inside he was shaking. Maren's eyes flickered weakly toward him. She tried to sit up, but pain tightened her face. "Easy," Adrian said gently. "You've been unconscious for nearly a week." She stared at him, confused. "Who?" "This is Mr. Hale," Lena whispered. "He helped us. He called the ambulance. He stayed with me. He saved you." Maren blinked slowly, tears gathering at the corners of her tired eyes. "Thank you. I don't know how." "You don't owe me anything," Adrian said immediately, stepping closer. "You just focus on healing, that's all." But she shook her head weakly. No one has helped us in years. I don't understand why you." "Because your daughter asked me to," he said simply, "and because you deserved help long before today." She closed her eyes briefly, overwhelmed. The doctor entered shortly after. He updated them gently. Maren would recover, but it would be slow. Her lungs were severely infected, and her body was extremely weak from years of exhaustion and lack of proper nutrition. "She cannot return to work for at least a few months," he said firmly. "She needs rest, medication, and a stable environment." Lena stiffened. Maren looked horrified. I can't stop working," she said, trying to sit upright again. "We barely pay rent. I have no savings if I don't work." "You won't work," Adrian said, cutting her off calmly but with a finality that left no room for argument. Maren stared stunned. "But—" "I've already arranged your medical expenses," he said. "I'll find you a safer home, a place where Lena can sleep without leaks in the ceiling, without cold drafts, without fear. I'll cover your recovery costs, therapy, food, everything." Maren's breathing faltered. "No, sir, I can't accept charity." "It's not charity," Adrian replied softly. "It's a responsibility." Maren looked at him, trembling. Why us?" He paused, meeting her eyes with a depth she didn't expect. "Because I've been where Lena is," he said quietly. "Because I know what it's like to watch a mother collapse from working too hard just to feed her child, and because no child should live that again." Maren's lips parted, surprise written plainly across her face. Lena climbed onto the bed, careful not to hurt her mother, and hugged her gently. "I told you he wouldn't leave us," she whispered. And Adrian realized that, Without meaning to, he had already become part of their small, fragile world. Weeks passed. Marin regained strength. Her cheeks gained color. Her voice grew steadier. Hospital staff smiled whenever they saw Lena skipping down the hall with a juice box in her hand. Adrian trailing behind her carrying her backpack like a bodyguard, assigned to a very important 8-year-old. He visited every day. And soon, visiting felt like coming home. When Marin was finally discharged, Adrian drove them personally, not to their old apartment, but to a small townhouse he had arranged. Warm, safe, with 2 bedrooms, sunlight through every window, and a tiny garden in the back where Lena immediately squealed and said she wanted to grow strawberries. Marin cried quietly when she saw it. "I can't repay you," she whispered. "You don't need to," Adrian said. "Just let yourselves breathe." But breathing was new for them. Breathing felt like a luxury. In the following days, Adrian found himself drawn into their lives more than he ever planned. He helped Lena with homework, brought groceries, arranged medical checkups. Sometimes they ate dinner together, Lena insisting on showing him her drawings, Marin shyly offering the dishes she managed to cook without tiring herself. He felt something healing inside himself too. Something he didn't know was broken. One evening, as the sun dipped in orange light over their little garden, Lena tugged at his sleeve. "Sorry." "Yes." "Are you gonna leave now that Mom is better?" The question stabbed deeper than he expected. Before he could answer, Marin appeared at the doorway, hands wiping nervously on a towel. "You've done enough for us," she said quietly. "You don't need to feel obligated to stay." Obligated. If only they knew. He looked at them, this fragile little family that had let him into their broken world and, without knowing, repaired something inside him too. So he knelt down beside Lena, brushing her hair lightly off her forehead. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. Her face lit up instantly, relief washing over her like sunshine after a storm. Marin swallowed, her eyes softening as she watched them. Lena wrapped her arms around his neck. "Good, because you're like family." The word hit him harder than he expected. "Family." He hugged her tightly. "You are too." Marin exhaled shakily, a small, grateful smile appearing on her lips. For the first time since he met her, she didn't look afraid of tomorrow. They went inside together. And in that small, warm house, with laughter instead of sirens, with food instead of fear, with hope instead of emptiness, Adrian realized something he had never known he needed. Not wealth, not success, not power, but this tiny family who had accepted him not because of his name or money, but because he showed up when they had no one left. Sometimes fate doesn't ask permission. Sometimes life rearranges everything in a single moment, like a little girl whispering, "Sir, my mom isn't waking up." Sometimes that moment becomes the beginning of a new world. And for Adrian, Lena, and Marin, it was the beginning of theirs.